to episode 6 of the Lantern Sports Podcast, hosted by the Lantern Sports Desk at The Ohio State University. I'm Stephen Kishpaugh, Assistant Sports Editor to the Lantern. Joining me as always, to my right, Assistant LTV Sports Producer Gabe Burggraf. Across from me, usually as always, Sports Editor Jacob Benge. And to my left, LTV Sports Producer Casey Smith. Gentlemen, a lot to talk about with Ohio State football. There was some sort of, record performance that happened on Saturday. If anybody had happened to be intensely invested in the game, we'll get to that. First, as always, just want to give the quick news around Ohio State athletics. Men's tennis, freshman Alexander Bernard and junior Justin Boulay each won their opening round matches over Old Dominion and Virginia Tech, respectively. And then the doubles pairing of Bernard and freshman Jack Winthrop both won their matches, as did the double pairing of Cannon Kingsley and J.J. Tracy, who are both ranked in the top 10 in the nation in men's singles. For the men's ice hockey team, forward Travis Treloar and goaltender Jakob Dopes earned second and third star of the week honors for the 2-0 games that they had against Mercyhurst. In the women's soccer team, forward Kayla Fisher and defender Talani Barnett each won a Big Ten Player of the Week honor, comes off the heels of 4 consecutive shutouts and a big 3-0 win over number 6 Penn State last week. And then finally, for women's volleyball, libero Kylie Murr was named Big Ten Co-Defensive Player of the Week, and setter Mac Pedraza, for the second time, was named Big Ten Co-Setter of the Week. After they won both games last week over rival Michigan and Indiana. So yesterday in the newsroom, there was a little contentious debate, I might call it, where after the record-setting or record-time performance for Mayan Williams on Saturday, there was, I'd say, a lively debate between Gabe and Casey over who the better running back is between Mayan Williams and second-year Trayvion Henderson. I told them to save it for the pod, and they got a little bit of it out, but, we're here now, and, we're here to settle the score here. So, Mr. Burggraf, what do you have to say in this debate?
All I have to say is don't catch your chickens before they hatch. Mine has played exceptionally well recently, but Trayvion, when fully healthy, as Ryan Day said today, they have 2 starters for a reason. Both of those guys are excellent, and I just personally feel that Trayvion is more well-rounded overall back. Ability to get out of the backfield and provide assistance to quarterback C.J. Stroud in the pass game. They're completely different players, so it's all subjective here. We have some objective stats that I'm sure Casey will get into. I'm sure he's got them pulled up. But, mine's played exceptionally well. An Ohio State touchdown record, just touching it, seeing it, and actually getting it is a crazy accomplishment. And I'm not here to say that he doesn't deserve that or that, these guys aren't great athletes in their own right. But I just think Trayvion Henderson, he was, correct me if I'm wrong, he was the starter at the beginning of the year, correct? When he was 100% healthy.
I would say running back 1. Though.
Right, running back 1. And Mayan has done a great job jumping into the role and really embracing that Ohio State grit and toughness to get into the end zone and run extremely well. But I think Trayvion has his own claim to that backfield in Columbus.
Hey, Gabe.
Hello?
So, I got a question for you. Take a wild guess who leads the country in yards per attempt with any rusher with at least 50 attempts on the year.
Well, I would imagine, since you tweeted this out earlier and I liked it, it's going to be Mayan Williams.
And you'd be correct, averaging 7.77. Wrap your head around that. 7.77 yards per carry each time you touch the ball. I mean, that's chunk yards. That's a first down on 2 plays. You're never getting into a third down situation, which Ohio State's great in. However, 8 touchdowns. Where do you think that ranks among the best backs in the country?
I would imagine that's at least top 10, if not top 5.
He is tied for 4th. He has 8, and Blake Corum from Michigan leads the country with 10. He only has 497 yards in the year, which is 20th. But like I said, only 64 attempts, which of the guys ahead of him in that top 20, he has the least. The second least attempts after his 64 are Jaden Ott of California, who has 72. So, I mean, Mayan Williams, he's doing more with less. So his ability to get the ball and really get those chunk yards to set up the play action for Ohio State's offense, he's a weapon. And that's why he's running back one in my mind once Trayvion Henderson gets healthy. Tony Alford today, he said he doesn't want anybody saying that Trayvion Henderson's playing bad. Not here to say that. I'm here to say Mayan Williams, when both are healthy, is going to trot out with the first team because he passes the eye test in my mind as just a hard-nosed, gritty football player. When I talked to Tony Alford, I believe last week or 2 weeks ago, when he recruits guys that are tough. And Mayan Williams, he embodies toughness and just how physical of a runner he is. I mean, you look at how many yards he's getting after contact, and I mean, even his breakaway speed, he's passing the eye test. He had that long touchdown run, which he came right into my camera. So his ability to get to the second level and break away from defenders, something that Trayvon Henderson, in my mind, has struggled with, especially against Arkansas State. He breaks off that 40-yarder to open the game, and he gets ran down by a safety. I don't think at Ohio State, if you're the feature back, that's allowed to happen because, like Ryan Day said today, the standard is so high, and he thinks that's an excellent standard to have because that holds people accountable, and that really creates, I don't know, some people that could be hoisting college football playoff trophy at the end of the year.
Well, and what you said, I absolutely love what you said. Mayan is a nuclear bomb of a weapon for the Buckeyes. I think it's really choosing between, that atomic drop and, Trayvion in his own right as more of a ballistic homing missile. You got guys that can do different things in different ways, and that's what's really going to make this Buckeyes offense interesting as we get into the second half of the schedule, even after the bye week. When they've got to play some of these tougher teams, Ryan Day is going to have to pick and choose who's in the situation when, who's exactly going to be the guy who can, get to the edge against Michigan, can get through the line against a team like the Wolverines. Trayvion has played to a level that we expect more from him, I think, in general, seeing what he did last year. He caught 27 passes last year, and he really hasn't been much of a factor in the pass game at all. But at the same time, he also has had a different kind of defense to face when he's been healthy. He didn't play Rutgers. So you know what I mean? It's a little bit different when you do face a team and a defense like Notre Dame to start, and then you play Rutgers. Not taking anything away from the Scarlet Knights or the Red Wolves, but they're not the Fighting Irish, and so that's a good context piece just to have. But both of those guys are going to be tremendous for the Buckeyes and have been tremendous for the Buckeyes. It'll be fun to see how they slot in potentially. I would love to see them next to each other, two running backs in the backfield to see what the Buckeyes can do, scheme-wise and formation-wise. But they're going to be just fine.
Here's my thing. You talked about Trayvon Henderson's threat in the pass game and how that's sort of been obsolete this year. He hasn't had to be. I mean, with Ohio State's wealth of wide receivers, even with Jackson Smith and Jigba on the sideline, you still have Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, Julian Fleming. I know you're a big Julian Fleming guy, so you'd be happy to hear that. Cade Stover is emerging in the pass game. And Xavier Johnson, Jaden Ballard, those guys are waiting in the wings, and they can get the job done when called upon. So Trayvon Henderson is not needed in the pass game. His sole purpose is running the football, running it effectively, picking up chunk yards, and moving the chains. And his health issues, you can't fault the guy for that.
Right.
It's an unfortunate situation, but it's a fact of life. He struggled staying on the field, and I think that's sort of due to him looking out for contact. He's seeking out contact as opposed to, you see Marvin Harrison Jr., he takes after his dad. He catches the ball and he gets down. And
right.
I think that's sort of played into his hands, not only being able to see that for years and years and years growing up, but if Trayvon Henderson, there's times he's on the sidelines and he's looking to lower a shoulder into that safety. If he just steps out of bounds, that's the biggest thing with a running back is the lifespan. And you hear about it in the NFL, you only get 4, maybe 5 years of a good running back if you're lucky. So you got to maximize that lifespan. So Trayvon Henderson, he's taking chunks off that lifespan by seeking out contact. And if he just, I know he's not going to do this because what does it look like for a running back? Oh, just dive down instead of looking out for contact. I mean, that's sort of what you're looking for in a running back. And like Tony Alford said, you want a tough guy. But I mean, if you can limit these hits and limit these injuries to where you could use them in the 2-back set. I mean, but that's just it's unfortunate fact of life. Can't stay on the field.
I just want to throw out an interesting stat before we move on to, the Ryan Day presser from today. Just, previewing this weekend's matchup against Michigan State. Ohio State is second nationally, 37 plays of 20 or more yards this season. Of those 20-plus yard playmakers, 5 of them, there's only one running back in the top 5. Mayan Williams. He's had 5 20-plus yard runs. Just something to think about, because with both Henderson and Williams' big play potential. But Jacob, you were at Ryan Day's press conference today, and this weekend Ohio State's finally going on the road, going to East Lansing. We'll be there too. Michigan State's usually a tough opponent. They've lost 3 straight, I believe. But anytime you go and face a Big Ten opponent on the road, especially one of that caliber, you're gonna probably face some struggles. And Jacob, what did you hear from Ryan Day today?
Yeah, it's always fun getting to hear from Ryan Day on the Tuesday press conferences. We also got to hear from Jim Knowles, defensive coordinator, and Tony Alford, the running backs coach. And, all 3 of them, as you mentioned, Stephen, they talked about how Michigan State, it's another Big Ten opponent. This time it's on the road, though. So, Ryan Day, he recalled running into a fan last week at Rutgers, and he said he was walking near the Blackwell, and a fan grabbed him and he said, "Hey, good luck today, Ryan. 63-0, right?" And he's like, "Well, okay, let's focus on just getting the first down of the game." And so I think that's what Ohio State needs to do against Michigan State as well. He's like we mentioned, first road game of the season. They're going to get introduced to a hostile environment, if you will, being the away team for the first time this season. They're going to get tested a little bit. Last season's matchup between Ohio State and Michigan State, I believe it was highly touted, top 10 game, didn't turn out to be one of those. But I think this year, Michigan State, hasn't really lived up to expectations. They're ranked highly at the start of the year. A couple of tough losses. But, you mentioned how Ohio State's going on the road. I'm interested to see it because, they're dealing with injuries. They've had a lot of comfortability at home. Now they're just going to make the trip up north to not the school up north, but a team up north, if you will.
Hey, Jacob, I seem to remember a certain Ohio State quarterback having a pretty successful day against the Spartans' defensive backs, right?
Oh, yeah, I recall. Very, very memorable.
I remember some records getting tied and another record getting broken as C.J. Stroud had most consecutive completions now in Ohio State history. It's 6 touchdowns, all in the first half. Mind you, don't forget that. So he had himself a field day in that top 10 matchup a season ago, kind of silencing ESPN's Desmond Howard's critical comments of him, questioning why he's a Heisman candidate. So that was a little interesting in its own right. However, Michigan State had a bad secondary last year. You know what they have this year? A bad secondary. They're ranked, let's see here, they're ranked 105th, allowing a 147 passer rating to opponent gunslingers, if you will. And then they're 115th in the country, allowing 275 yards through the air. I mean, get this. That's the worst of any Ohio State opponent by far. So, I mean, C.J. Stroud, despite the weather conditions, I mean, Spartan Stadium, it's going to be swirling. That's why punters have so much success there, and that's why Michigan State's punter is one of the best in the country. It has that weird swirling wind. Who knows if that gets down to the field level and can affect some of the deep balls from C.J. Stroud. But, I mean, I expect this to be a very similar matchup to last season. I don't expect the crowd to be into it much because Mel Tucker, he gets that $95 million contract extension, and now he's losing a sense of the locker room. And, I mean, Peyton Thorne, he's not the guy he was last year because he doesn't have Kenneth Walker toting the rock. So, I mean, I expect this to be another Ohio State glide to an easy victory. Just another, I think C.J. Stroud definitely gets back on track after struggling last week and having arguably one of his worst games in an Ohio State uniform.
I mean, you could argue it was probably his worst game in an Ohio State uniform, but, they didn't really need to rely on him in order to win that game. But...
You know why, Gabe? You know why?
I would imagine they ran the ball.
Yeah, with who?
Does it really matter? It's Ohio State.
Mayan Williams. That's.
I do find it
interesting you bring up the Ohio State-Michigan State from last year. Michigan State game from last year because, I talked with Desmond Howard last year doing Rivalry Edition stories, and before the Michigan State game, he was talking about C.J. Stroud's Heisman candidacy, and he said, I don't know if I'm a C.J. Stroud Heisman, I guess on board with that. And so I asked him again the next week when Ohio State traveled to Ann Arbor, and he kind of clarified a little bit, but then he said Ohio State's got multiple Heisman caliber players. They should look more towards that running back Trayvion Henderson. So if you will, Desmond Howard really enjoys watching Trayvion Henderson play, and to be honest with you, I haven't really thrown my hat in this ring here, but Trayvion Henderson is probably the guy I would, give the ball to first of Ohio State's two running back pair there. And I mean, it's a great point. It's a great debate. I mean, this is probably Ohio State's best running back duo at least since Ryan Day's been head coach. Trey Sermon, Master Teague in 2020 were terrific, but Trey Sermon really turned it on there at the end of the year. Unfortunately, got hurt in the national championship game, but you really can't go wrong with Trayvion Henderson or Mayan Williams.
And I want to clarify, we need to start talking about, if Mayan keeps putting up numbers like this, he should be in the Heisman consideration. He has been playing so well this year that he's been toting the rock and carrying the load, the weight off the shoulders of this Buckeyes offense. You look at Rutgers and you look at that 49-10 score, the differential didn't cover. Thank you very much. But, at the end of the day, you look and C.J. Stroud, maybe not his worst game of the year, considering what happened week 1 against Notre Dame and how that game kind of panned out in terms of scoring, but a couple of mistakes from C.J. Stroud Saturday against this Rutgers defense. Notably, the interception he threw, I don't know who he was throwing that to. It was somebody in a white Rutgers uniform, and he had a couple underthrows, but he's been stellar this year. But at the same time, that offensive line has to get some love. No matter who's running it, there's been protection for C.J. Stroud to deliver dimes, and there have been freight train runways for Mayan Williams, Trayvion Henderson, and anybody to come out of that backfield.
I want to point out that there is somebody who noted that not Trayvion Henderson, Mayan Williams is a Heisman candidate. In my 5 takeaways, I noted that last week Mayan Williams wasn't even an option to bet on. Like, the odds were just so low, and one game later he's up to the 10th best odds in the nation. I mean, that's spectacular. But you guys were talking about C.J. Stroud, and when you mentioned earlier, Casey, that the Michigan State secondary was bad, but I would say that they are better this year solely because last season they were dead last in the nation in terms of passing defense, and in this season, I mean, they're ranked 115th, so I guess that's improvement. But at the same time, you look at what happened last season, and Michigan State hasn't fully upgraded its secondary to the point where it's not even in the top half in the NCAA. And in fact, they're second to last in the Big Ten currently. I just think that if there was any game for Stroud to have a bad game in, it would be Rutgers. And the perfect opponent to face next is Michigan State because, I mean, I have some of the stats in front of me. Rushing defense, 62nd in the nation, 10th in the Big Ten. Passing defense, 275 yards per game, 13th in the Big Ten. Total defense, 411.8 yards per game. 100th in the nation, 12th in the Big Ten. And Ohio State's offense are the number 1 offense in the country right now. And, with all that being said, I just, Michigan State, they don't have the explosive firepower like they did last season with Kenneth Walker. And they don't really seem to be that hungry, feisty team that took Michigan wire to wire and beat them in Spartan Stadium. Instead, they kind of just look like another Northwestern right now.
What would you have said about Missouri before last week? That's my one thing is, it's hard to win on the road. It's easier said than done, and for Ohio State, it might be easier done than said this year, but the Buckeyes are going to have to learn this year how to, get that rocket of an offense going on the road, and it'll probably be easier than difficult, but, Missouri put up a hell of a fight against Georgia and probably should have won that game.
Yeah, because, I mean, you look back, and that was they missed a false start on that 4th and goal. And
we're not talking about
the tenacity of the defending champions.
I know. But getting back to, you were talking about Michigan State. I mean, yeah, is their secondary improved? Yeah, maybe. But 115th, are you kidding me? The 2 competent quarterbacks they faced this year, Talia Tagovailoa and Michael Penix Jr., former Big Ten quarterback from Indiana. Talia put up 32 completions on 41 attempts for 314 yards and a touchdown. And then Michael Penix went for 397 and 4 touchdowns. So those quarterbacks, they're towards the top of the country. They're not C.J. Stroud in my mind. Obviously, I think the wealth of pass catching options that C.J. Stroud has at his disposal will help him out. But I expect Stroud to probably go for like 370 and I'd say 5 touchdowns.
When we go back to making score predictions and stat predictions, it's a challenging moment in my week, but it's also one of the most fun. Looking at this matchup on the precipice, Ohio State's got a lot of momentum going, hitting the road for the first time, as Gabe mentioned, and it's a great point. I think Ohio State's really going to have to, buckle down early, just like as Ryan Day likes to say, start fast. I kind of expect Michigan State to take the ball to open the game and put Ohio State's defense up first in a new road crowd there. It'll be interesting to see what Jim Knowles' defense looks like on the road. As Casey said, I still see Ohio State to really command the game on Saturday. Not really run into too much. Defensively, they've looked really sharp in the last 2 conference games. Offensively, there's been some sputters, some questions of, is it a clunky offense? Well, at the end of the day, they still score more points than the opposing team. This week, I'm going 52-10 Ohio State. Trayvion Henderson may or may not get in the game, but if he does, expect a touchdown.
Yeah, last time C.J. Stroud played quarterback at Spartan Stadium, he ran for 48 yards and a touchdown. And I was watching over that play today, and you hear Stroud in the open field, and you kind of chuckle because, ever since he's taken over the starter, all the rumors have been, he's not a running quarterback. He's not a running quarterback. I don't know. I kind of get the sense that Ryan Day sort of institutes plays to get guys the ball. You get Mayan Williams that 5th touchdown. They're late after, 7 tries on the 1-yard line. And then, you get Mitch Rossi a touchdown, those type guys. I think if Ohio State gets down on the goal line, I could see C.J. Stroud taking it and running with it just to assert his dominance on the ground against the Spartans. And I think it's sort of a cakewalk this week. I don't think Michigan State's able to keep up. I think maybe they get a touchdown early, sort of like Rutgers, but Jim Knowles, he's the mastermind of all sorts of adjustments, and I see Ohio State running away with this one, 52-13.
It's interesting because last week that was a tough beat. 39-point win, 40-point spread, and we all picked Ohio State to cover. But this weekend, I'm just curious to see what the opposing environment is like. Just how into it are the crowd? Because the crowd might play a big factor, especially if Michigan State's able to hold on for longer than a quarter. But I just don't see any way that their pass defense can keep Stroud and the receivers out of the end zone. And I really don't see how Peyton Thorne and co. can keep up with the offense. 26.5-point spread. I'll go Ohio State wins 48-14.
Interesting. So what, 14, 13, and what did you say, Jacob? 10? I'm going to go 20. Because I think this Michigan State defense is going to get a turnover. The Buckeyes have been, aside from Stroud's interception and the early muffed punt, they have been excellent at preserving possessions and taking care of the ball. I think this is a more relatively close game than Saturday. But I think, like all of you have said, the Buckeyes should take care of business. It is the first business where you have to take a road trip, though. And I think Ohio State will do that in dominant fashion. I think it is a 52-20 Ohio State win.
All right, that does it for episode 6 of the Lantern Sports Podcast, hosted by the Lantern Sports Desk. For Jacob Benge, Casey Smith, and Gabe Burggraf, I'm Stephen Kishpaugh, and we'll see you in the next episode.